One of the best ways to understanding the double entry bookkeeping system is to visualize it using the transaction worksheet. Today, we will discuss what is the perfect format to do it, and by the end of the video, I will let you know how to get a copy of the exact worksheet that we will be using. This is Accounting Zero to Hero. We are here to help you understand the fundamental accounting concepts through simplified technical discussions and practical applications of the accounting standards. All of this to help you go from zero to hero. The transaction worksheet is a tool to summarize the journal entries of a business during a period of time. A well-designed worksheet will showcase your understanding of the fundamental concepts. For now, we will discuss how to do it in a spreadsheet such as Microsoft Excel. In order to have a perfect worksheet, you need to put in a few things. Let's discuss the different specific rows that you need to add. The first one are the financial statements. The overall goal of your worksheet is to build up the balance sheet and the income statement. So putting them above the worksheet is the best way to do it. The second important row are the elements. You have to imagine the transaction worksheet as a long form of the accounting equation. That's why you have to add assets, liabilities, and equity under the balance sheet, and income and expense under the income statement. The third most important row to add are the specific accounts. This is a detailed breakdown of the elements in the second row, and it shows the specific accounts that you will be using in the journal entries. This is the row where you can actually get creative. You can add specific accounts as you need them in your journal entries. However, you have to remember that in order to add an account, you have to have a thought process. You have to think about if the account that you want to add is a balance sheet or an income statement account. After determining that it's a balance sheet account, think about, is it an asset, a liability, or an equity account? If it's an income statement account, is it an income or an expense? Once you determine those first two things, you now have to add a specific column to each element depending on what account that you need. This is why it's important for me to establish first the first two rows so that you can have a more structured transaction worksheet. The next few rows in your worksheet are where your transactions or journal entries will go. We will discuss this in a bit later. The next important row are the totals. This will provide you with a running balance of each account. It's important to put this because you have to see what are the totals of your accounts as you enter each and every transaction. Totaling all of your accounts as early as the first journal entry will help you determine if your trial balance is balancing. The formula of this one is just a simple sum formula, and the formula is applied to all the cells within the column. So those are the important rows that you need to put in. Let's now talk about the columns. Number one, we need to put in the date and description of the journal entries. Those are the first two columns that I want you to add. The next few parts are one of the most important things that I want to discuss. We will input numbers in this area, and we will input them in specific ways. You know that numbers in accounting are represented by debits and credits. And now in this worksheet, we will input debits as a black font with a positive sign, and credits with a red font and a negative sign. The reason is that it will be easier for you to determine what is a debit and a credit at first glance of the worksheet. This worksheet has also been designed so that a credit number is automatically entered to be in red, but the positive number is automatically entered to be in black. If you want to know how to do it, you just have to highlight the cells, right-click, go to Format Cells, Custom, and select this part. Select this type. If you do that, it will be automatic. And now, the last column that I want to discuss with you, which is one of the most important for me, is the first column right here. It proves the accounting equation check. Like, for example, if your entry is not balancing, you will see that it is not zero. As long as it is not zero, you are doing something wrong in your entry. For example, if you determine that you have to receive 10,000 of cash from your owner, which is supposed to be a credit. But you know that, as we discussed before, a credit should be a negative sign. But you forgot to put in a negative sign. So now, your accounting equation or your balance sheet is not balancing because you have two debits. And you will only see that by noticing that there is a 20,000 here and it's not zero. So if you put this as a negative sign, you know that you have a debited cash, credited owner's capital, because a red font and a negative sign is in credit, and you have a zero accounting check. So that is the transaction worksheet that we will be using in this video. We will journalize 6 simple transactions to exemplify how the worksheet works. For each transaction, we will already show you the journal entries, and we will focus on how they will be inputted in the transaction worksheet. We will also show how to check your worksheet every step of the way to ensure your trial balance is always balancing. As an added bonus, a balance sheet and an income statement is presented at the right of the screen to show you how your balance sheet and income statement or your financial statements will look like as we enter transactions in the transaction worksheet. You will see that all of these accounts are linked to the total balances of each account. This will be a very good practice on how to visualize your journal entries on how they flow from a journal entry level to the financial statements level. So now let's start. The first transaction on January 1 is an initial investment. AZH Company started operations and received the following investments from the owner: a cash of 100,000, land worth 25,000, and supplies to be used for the service revenue costing 10,000. The journal entry is already presented at the top right of the screen. You will see that we have debited cash worth 100,000, which means that we have to put a positive sign in the cash. We have received land of 25,000, which is a debit of 25,000 for land, and supplies for 10,000. You will see from the check that we have a difference of 135,000 because we forgot to credit the owner's capital of 135,000. So we know that this entry is correct because our check is zero, because when you add all of the transactions, your debits are all equal to your credits. Now we're done with transaction 1. Transaction 2, we borrowed money from ABC Bank amounting to 50,000, payable in 5 years. So we will just account for the bank loan. We know that for a bank loan, you received cash of 50,000, that's why you're debiting cash. And then your liability increased by the same amount. So we are crediting liability, and the credit is always negative. Negative 50,000. So your check is zero because your debit is always equal to your credit. The third transaction is a purchase of additional supplies amounting to $20,000 on account. When we say on account, it means you have not yet paid it. So we have increased supplies for 20,000 because you received supplies. And then your accounts payable will increase. An increase in liability is a credit. So we credit 20,000 to your accounts payable. You have to ensure always that your check is zero. The fourth transaction is when AZH Company rendered services again on account, earning a total of 350,000. When we say on account, meaning the customers didn't pay us yet. So we increased our accounts receivable by 350. And then we earned revenue for 350. You know that an increase in revenue is a credit. So our check is still the same, 0, because our debit of 350 from accounts receivable increase in asset is equal to a credit of 350, which is an increase in revenue. On June 19, we incurred operating expenses again on account amounting to 55,000, meaning we incurred expenses of 50,000, which is a debit. And then we are increasing our accounts payable, which is a credit. Our last transaction is a collection of accounts receivable amounting to 150,000. For here, we increased our cash because we received cash. And then we are crediting accounts receivable for the same amount because we are decreasing accounts receivable from the collection. And now we're done. We now have to check if the trial balance is balancing or if our financial statements are balancing. And we have a final check here below to check our totals. If you go to the right of the screen, you will also see how the balance sheet and the income statement will look like for this simple company. We have a $300,000 of cash linked to the total of the cash account, 200,000 of accounts receivable linked to the total of the accounts receivable column, 30,000 of supplies, and 25,000 of land, having a total asset of 555,000, which is equal to your total assets here in your transaction worksheet. This is why it's very important for you to classify all of your accounts as to the financial statements early on. So your total income is 295,000, which is 350 less the 55. So you will know that this is correct because your total liabilities and equity is equal to your total assets, which is what the accounting equation is all about. As you use a transaction worksheet of this type, you can freely add columns and rows depending on your need. Just don't forget to adjust all of the formulas, the totals, and the checks. And if you want to have a copy of all of this worksheet that we used in this video, just email us at contactus@accounting0tohero.com and I will gladly send this to you. In the next installments, we will learn about the T accounts and how to incorporate them in the transaction worksheet, and also the concept of normal balances and contra accounts. And that's it for today. If you have any questions about the topics covered in this video, please feel free to comment down below and I will do my best to respond to you. And if you want to be updated of any future topics, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. See you!